Thanks for joining us on Indivisible. We're glad to have you with us, America. Got a great guest tonight. My friend Lara Logan is with us, and we're going to discuss cancel culture. We're going to discuss CRT, the border, and everything that's going on in America that's affecting you, your kids, your grandkids, and what it means for you going forward. So stick with us. We'll be right back with Lara Logan. Big news, America. Mike is bringing back the pillow offer for just $29.98. They're the softest pillows. They don't go flat. Wash them and dry them as many times as you like, and they still keep their shape. And they're made in America. Mike is offering his premium My Pillows at his lowest price ever. Queen size for $29.98, regularly $69.98. That's a $40 savings. And king size, only $5 more. Go to mypillow.com and enter the promo code Indivisible for my show, or call 1-800-716-4639 and give them the code Indivisible for my show, and you're going to get huge savings. We're back, and we're coming to you from deep in the heart of Texas. I've got my friend Lara Logan with me, and we're going to start off tonight by discussing cancel culture before we get on to these other subjects. And the reason I want to attack cancel culture right away is just this last week, Lara's been attacked by I think a gentleman at the Washington Post. Is that right, Lara? Was it the Washington Post?
Well, they haven't printed their piece yet. We'll see. It was a side swipe at me and an attack piece on Tucker Carlson.
Right, and then my friend Jimmy out in California, his daughter was attacked. She's being canceled after winning homecoming queen at a high school in Northern California. They all celebrated her. She's one of the few conservative girls in the school. Highly celebrated, highly acclaimed. It was a huge day, not only for my friend Jimmy and his daughter, but for the school and for the community. And then they tried to bring up something that happened when she was 14 years old to take away her crown just in the last week. This is happening to me, it's happening to Lara, it's happening to Tucker, it's happening to everybody across the board. It doesn't matter if you're a nurse, it doesn't matter if you're a doctor, a journalist, a lawyer. If you disagree with this administration or these mandates or CRT or what's happening anywhere across the administration, then you're getting canceled. And people have had it in America. I've had it. I know that you've had it, and we're going to talk about it tonight. And I want Lara to give her opinion on this cancel culture phenomenon and why it matters and what's going on and what do you think about it? What's your opinion, Lara?
Well, one of the problems with cancel culture that is not typically addressed is that many of the people doing the canceling are very bad people. And they do it sometimes systematically because they're paid to do it by political organizations, or they do it, as in the case of Jimmy and his daughter. The guy who did it to her had done it to two other girls as well.
Right, exactly.
And actually, she's a victim of bullying and intimidation, and so are the other girls. And so what happens is that all the focus is on her. And something that she said 3 years ago, there's no other evidence to support any of the criticisms, right?
Right.
And yet, and this guy who's actually a bully and who's actually probably criminally liable for what he's done
Absolutely.
to these young girls, he just walks away, right, scot-free. And it's the same with these political organizations and with these activists and a lot of very nefarious people with a very destructive, vicious, ruthless agenda. And they don't cancel you a lot of the time for the right reasons. That's another big problem with it, is that they're going after people not because they really care about racism. I mean, otherwise, why, when the governor of Virginia does blackface,
right,
it doesn't matter.
Right.
But, when someone on the right does it, it does. Right? And why is it that no one on the right can talk about, say that anyone's like the Nazis, but if you're conservative, you can't say that.
Right.
But anyone on the left can compare anyone on the right to a Nazi or to Hitler or to anything else, and that's totally fine. So this double standard is part of what is coming apart now. Americans have seen the tactics used over and over and over again. And actually, John, one of the things that's really being exposed now is that they don't have a lot more to their arsenal, right, of weapons.
Right.
It's the same weapons being used over and over again. So, you know, that's why now, even if you're black or Hispanic, you're being called a white supremacist.
Look at Larry Elder, Uncle Tom.
And he's not the only one, right? There's many, many
Candace
more.
Owens, Leo Terrell, is it Dean Torelli? I'm not even saying that right.
No, Leah Terrell.
Leo Terrell.
You were right.
Janine Borelli. Janine Borelli, people like that. You're absolutely right. And it goes on. It goes on
Yeah,
and on.
it goes on and on and on. And the other problem is that it's now spreading, right? So before it was kind of easy. They had everybody whipped up into a frenzy over every, you know, word out of Donald Trump's mouth. And Donald Trump's personality and the criticisms obscured, right? The emotion obscured all of the other debates and conversations and hid the policies. And one of the things I always said was that Donald Trump was being attacked not because of Donald Trump, but because that really it's the American people who were under attack.
Right.
Because we, the people, chose Donald Trump to be their president. I didn't vote, right? Because I'm not a citizen, so I can't vote. So I wasn't defending my own personal choice. I was just stating a fact that we, the people, are the government of this country. And we, the people, chose their leader. And what you discovered was that we, the people, was a great idea as long as it was only an idea. Right. As long as nobody, as long as we, the people, never actually used their power and used their voice in a way that the people who are normally in control and normally in charge in the way that they agreed with.
Yeah, they like the way it sounds as long as you're not doing anything, right?
Yes, exactly. Because they don't actually like we the people. You know, I mean, it's very obvious. They're very patronizing. And in fact, it's gone so far now. The moment Donald Trump was out of the way, what happened, right? What happened is you saw that we the people were the real target. You saw it with January 6th. Yeah. You saw it with critical race theory and
the mask mandates.
The parents. And the mask mandates now are making it apparent.
The border?
Because these are not left and right issues. They are universal issues. This is about freedom and control. You know, tyranny versus freedom and control versus free will. And people on all sides see it now. Many black people are suspicious of the vaccines, and they're not. I've been attacked for saying that they're not vaccines, but a vaccine historically is something that actually prevents you from getting a disease.
Sure.
These vaccines don't prevent you getting it, and they don't prevent you passing it on.
And they haven't been through enough human trials to really establish a long history of the study of these so-called vaccines.
Well, that's true, but specifically what I'm talking about is that it doesn't actually meet the CDC's own definition. So
no doubt.
They then changed the language, right? Because, oh, no, that definition was, you know, it was misleading. Except,
right.
Okay, and so they had to change the definition to make this fit. But people are not fooled, and that's people on all sides, right? That's literally all races, all colors, all creeds, all classes, all everything. And now you have this problem that it's not just these right-wing Christians, right? Who object. You've got hippies. You have, you know, people from sort of old school kind of Democrats. You have
nurses
many black people. You have medical professionals.
Yes.
Yes, you have people from all walks of life.
More than half in New York City, medical professionals, doctors, administrators, nurses, they haven't been vaxxed.
So what this is doing, right, is exposing cancel culture for what it really is. Is that it was never about the real principles. It was never about the real issue. It was about creating a culture and a climate of fear.
Yes.
Where we self-censor and we don't say anything, right? We just go along with it. Whether we agree with it or not, we go along with it. How many kids in college today don't want to admit that they're conservative, right? How many people don't want to say that they go to church? How many people don't want to
say they're law enforcement or military?
Or admit that they might watch Fox News,
right?
Right? I mean, and that's not a free society. It doesn't matter whether we agree with it or not. People say, oh, she's on Fox, so she's going to say that. It wouldn't make any difference if I was still on 60 Minutes, right? It doesn't make any difference whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated. You know, the facts now are really proving the lie. The lies are falling apart in every direction. In every direction. The Teachers Association had to withdraw their letter to Merrick Garland, right, asking for parents to be classified as domestic terrorists.
Had to.
The January 6th is being exposed now. The fact that they won't release the security camera footage, the fact that there were FBI agents on the ground. Now suddenly we've gone from where people were terrified to say, I don't actually think that's an insurrection.
Right.
Right? Because if you're going to have an insurrection, you actually need a plan. You need a mechanism to control the government. You need armed forces. You need this. You need that. You need that. And there's no sign of any of that. Never mind that no one's been charged with insurrection. And then you have Americans in a black site for foreign terrorists who've been denied their basic legal rights, who have been in solitary confinement, the most cruel punishment that there is, without ever being convicted of a crime.
Right.
I mean, talk about detention.
And then you look at the year
without
before.
trial.
Look at the year before, the 250 straight days of burning, looting, murder, assault. None of those went punished. In fact, Kamala Harris helped set up a fund to make sure that these people were released.
And in fact,
how's that not? And people were really murdered. Ashley Babbitt was the only person murdered on January 6th, and that Ashley Babbitt was not part of the other side.
And look how that has fallen apart as well, that narrative, right? Because originally it was 5 people were killed by, Trump's lawless, violent supporters, right? And then it turned out that none of those people were actually murdered by any Trump supporters.
Exactly.
And so as these lies fall apart, people are losing their fear. But also, as people really see the cost, no young girl should be tortured and bullied and intimidated and attacked for something that she didn't even mean, right? And where there's no, I mean, it's not like you're letting, somebody get away with terrible crimes against people. And, there's a pattern of behavior, and a real pattern, not a manufactured one, which is the other part of cancel culture, right? They get these journalists. Some of them are real journalists. Many of them are political operatives. Some of them, barely pass as real journalists. And they take little pieces of information, say maybe somewhere that you worked or something that has just enough truth in it that you can't quite shake it. But they put it all together in a very misleading way, or, a blatantly dishonest way. And
I was going to say, and if those are the rules we were going to live by, every 12, 13, 14-year-old out there, we could get for cancel culture, because everybody's got stupid stuff when they're 12, 13, 14 years old, right?
What my 16-year-old daughter said to me was, the rules are constantly changing. It's like the ground beneath us is moving and shifting all the time. We don't even know where we are. She said, I don't even know, if I want to walk up to someone in a store and say, ma'am, could you help me? I don't even know if I'm going to offend them just by saying that.
Sure.
Which is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And it shouldn't be that way. And back to something that Lara has just said. She started at the beginning talking about the race part of it, okay? And you can see how silly that part of it is, because like even last night, so you had Lieutenant Governor, first black Lieutenant Governor in the state of Virginia to win. You didn't hear anything from AOC. You didn't hear anything from Presley or Omar. Nothing, not a peep, right? And this should be a celebrated thing. Okay, if it was Kamala Harris, of course, they're going to come out and celebrate it. It's going to be all over Twitter, but nothing with that. But the other part of it is they use this as a cudgel only when it's convenient for them, right? Okay, and look at it like this. A lot of the people that use race, Al Sharpton is a really good example here, because this guy, he's just ridiculous. And how he's even have Reverend attached to his name is beyond ridiculous. He's no man of God. But the thing that really bothers me about it is when someone uses race as a cudgel, or especially when they're dealing with teenagers and that kind of a thing, of this cancel culture part of it, they use it, again, by picking pieces, okay, that they can use at their convenience. But what they don't do is apply the same eyeglass, the same mirror, the same reflection to themselves. And they being the people that project this back onto these people that they cancel, those people are usually racist themselves.
Well, the thing about it is that this is a weapon that they use against people who they perceive to be their enemies, whether it's their political enemies. They're in the way somehow. And no one turns the gun on themselves, right?
Right.
They don't do that, because if they did, it would be a headshot,
They'd be
right?
in trouble.
It'd be one shot, one kill, because, look at their own records. But, what bothers me much more than that, because I guess I'm kind of used to the hypocrisy. I think it's so obvious to everyone at this point. And what bothers me is that there are some real legitimate racial issues
Absolutely.
that deserve to be addressed. And there's some real injustice that we all benefit from by addressing that, right?
Absolutely.
However, what is happening here is those people are used, they're exploited, and they're discarded. And if you really have an issue with racism, like I do, and I've had all my life, that I mean,
It's like the story.
The reason I have an issue with it is that it pains me.
Absolutely.
It is the injustice. I cannot stand the injustice of racism.
Absolutely.
And now this is another injustice. And the other thing that I would say is that it's funny, people don't want to be labeled conservative or Republican or whatever fits into the basket of deplorables, right? But it's very telling that the one label nobody could survive, the one label no one wanted more than any other, was racist. And that in itself tells you how far we have come. Because people could be called anything, but nobody wanted to be called racist.
Of course not.
And so the most important label to put on Donald Trump from the very beginning was white supremacist, right? Because that folds in racism and everything bad. And that was the one label that was going to stay with him throughout his presidency, and it was going to make, good, decent people, good Republicans, decent, conservatives, they were going to be like, oh, that's a bridge too far.
Right.
I don't want to say in public that I support Donald Trump, right?
Right.
And it's so ironic, because the very thing that people were accused of is actually, it just shows you that we really are at a point where nobody wants to be racist or called racist or be associated with racism. We've come that far. And it doesn't mean that I'm not saying it's a panacea or it's perfect. And I realize, some people will look at that and say, oh, look at that spoiled white woman, right, talking about how far we've come. She has no idea. I'm not saying that for a single second. There's nothing in my life that has been more important to me, and nothing that has troubled me more than the injustice of racism and making that right. But at the same time, they have wanted us to focus on what divides us for a reason.
Right.
And it's ironic, because what unites us, we're united in our distaste and disgust for racism.
And we really all, and see, that's the crazy thing, because all my black friends, my Hispanic friends, white friends, when we come together, we don't talk about racism, okay? Because when we're together, we're not racist towards each other. We love one another.
No one cares.
And no one cares. And it's like the Jussie Smollett hoax, okay, with Kim Fox, or whether it's
there are so many hoaxes.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And by the way, Donald Trump, he was the furthest thing from a racist. You ask black people that worked for him, they love Donald Trump. I'm not kidding. And this is across the board. And a lot of these people, and including Al Sharpton, okay, and many others, by the way, these guys all bowed to Donald Trump and loved Donald Trump before he became president.
Yeah.
Once he became president, oh, now he's the racist. He's the big, orange man bad. Okay.
Well, you know why? Because the enforcers of cancel culture made sure of it. And that's the other part about cancel culture.
The enforcers.
That doesn't get discussed. Yes, it's the puppet masters. It's those pulling the strings.
And it's the perpetuated lie that I've been talking about on this show for a long time. Everybody knows. And I still do not understand how the left gets away with this. And if I could have a moment with President Trump, especially if he runs again and wins again, let's get this out of the way with a national discussion in front of a national audience from the White House, if need be. I'll help. And here's what I would say. let's set the record straight. The Democratic Party is the party of slavery. They are the party of the KKK. They are the party that resisted civil rights legislation. The Republicans voted for it. The Democrats did not. It was the Democratic Party. Yes, Jim Biden. Yes, Barack Obama. Yes, Hillary Clinton. And by the way, we know about your relationship with Robert Byrd, the former Grand Wizard of the KKK. Know all about it. You've lied to your constituents for over 60 years. And how you've gotten away with it, I have no idea, other than the fact that no one has stepped up and said something about it and done it at a national level. But they have lied to the American people about this, and they've gotten away with it. And it just bothers me because it's a lie.
Well, I have to say you're out of my lane now because
I'm sorry.
No, because I didn't grow up here, and it's not something I have spent an extraordinary amount of time on. But I will say that someone who did spend a lot of time on it, and who paid a very heavy price, who was one of the first ever to be canceled, was Dinesh D'Souza.
Absolutely.
And when he said it, you know, it was a completely different time. It was many years ago, and no one else dared, right?
God bless him.
And I'll be honest, I mean, growing up in South Africa, watching Hollywood movies and watching the media coming from the East Coast, I mean, I never associated the Democratic Party with slavery or with the KKK or with anything else. I mean, that image of America from the outside is that the Republicans, you know, are the bad guys and the racists, and the Democrats, of course, you know, are everything that is good and virtuous, and they are the guardians and the fighters, you know, against these things. And what's interesting about that to me is I don't understand, now that I live in the middle of the country, in flyover country, and have been here for a number of years and have traveled all across the middle of the country and other places too, in the, you know, far north and deep south. I am really shocked that Americans who don't live on the East and West Coast have allowed their culture and their history to be completely written out of the American narrative and erased.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. You know, when you look at the record of people who have won, who have been awarded the Medal of Honor, when you look at, you know, heroic figures throughout time, when you look at titans of industry, I mean, when you look at anything, whether it's, you know, the people who have excelled in the music industry or in sports, they don't all come from New York and LA.
No. No.
You know, we act as if the middle of the country is just this, you know, awful seething mass of worthless humanity, right? That somehow still exists in spite of the fact that
they're only acknowledged
no right
once.
to.
Well, I was going to say they're only acknowledged once they get to New York or once they get to LA. Before then, it's like they're nobody, right? Like Tom Cruise. Take Tom Cruise or Emilio Estevez, Humphrey
Then
Bogart.
it's just a quaint story about, you know, it's a quaint backstory to put in the profile, right? In Vanity Fair or
a lot of
Hollywood
these guys
Reporter.
came from my home state, by the way, of Ohio. Ohio used to be the home of Warner Brothers.
Yeah,
a lot of people
but
don't
you know,
that.
but since they've, you know, been living in LA or New York, they've left all that behind, John. So they're okay.
Right. We're bad. We're the bad guys, right? No, it's a good point. It's a really good point, and we've allowed this to happen. A couple reasons. Number one, this revisionist history with this Marxist movement. We're going to get to that in our next segment when we discuss CRT. But also the fact that, and this is real simple, folks, we don't teach American history. We stopped teaching American history in our schools. It's like the other classes. I talk to people about this all the time. What happened to home ec? I took home ec in junior high. I learned to cook. You know, I know people.
I learned how to bake.
Yeah,
I love that. And
those are great skills.
well, because when else are you going to learn them?
If you're not following, like my mom can cook, and I got a lot of great recipes from her. But it was my desire to want to be able to know how to cook on my own. Okay, and same thing with wood shop or metal or, you know, we need welders.
You still do those.
Yeah, some of those they still do, but they stopped teaching American history, and I think we know why now.
They renamed it social studies.
Exactly.
And well, we know why, because not only do they want to rewrite the history, but they also want to tell it any way they want.
Right? That's right, revisionist history. We'll be right back with Lara Logan. By now, you've all heard me talk about Mike and his great products. Well, guess what? Mike's now introduced his My Pillow, My Slippers, which are fantastic. Great on my feet, soft as can be. I love them. Mike's taken over 2 years to develop these slippers. He's designed them to wear indoor or outdoor all day, all night long. Made with My Pillow foam and impact gel to help prevent fatigue. Made with quality leather suede. For a limited time, Mike is offering 40% off his new My Slippers. The My Slippers are so comfortable, you're going to want to get them for the whole family. Go to mypillow.com and click on the radio listener square and use promo code INDIVISIBLE. You'll also get deep discounts on all My Pillow products, including the Giza Dream bed sheets, the My Pillow mattress topper, and My Pillow towel sets. Or call 1-800-716-4639 and enter INDIVISIBLE as your promo code. And we're back with Lara Logan, and this next segment I want to get into CRT, this white fragility, white guilt, all this nonsense that's now coming to our schools, as if the mask mandates were not enough. And we see what's happening at these school board meetings. Parents are showing up in droves. Every week it increases. We see it across the country, small towns, big cities alike. Parents have had enough of both of these issues, but specifically I want to talk about the CRT thing because we were just talking about race, and the CRT thing being a part of this Marxist movement by, and I just got to get into this, Patrisse Cullors is one of the founders of BLM. All of this came out of the Michael Brown thing in Ferguson, which was all based on hands up, don't shoot, which was a lie. We know that the officer, Darren, I'm trying to remember his last name, but the officer in that situation in Ferguson was in the right. Michael Brown had just robbed a store. Then when the officer confronts him, he decides to attack the officer.
Let me stop you there for a second, John, because what actually happened with Ferguson is it was a planned operation. Well, it was an operation.
Oh, I know that.
And the words "stop, don't shoot" that Michael Brown was supposed to have uttered before he was, gunned down mercilessly by the racist white cop were never spoken. And the autopsy showed that Michael Brown, in fact, was fighting with him for his gun and was inside the vehicle and so on and so on. But what is actually, there's two significant things about what you mentioned. One is that if you go back, it really started long before then.
Oh, yeah.
The issue of race as a divisive issue in American society was recognized way back in 1920 when Lenin sent one of his emissaries to the United States to identify what was a way in for the communists to separate Americans and spread their ideology. And they did this all over the world. They did it, for example, in Algeria. And in Algeria, it was Islam, right? And that was separating the French. And because, most people in Algeria were not Muslim at that time, and most of them didn't want independence from France. And they have successfully exploited these fissures in societies all over the world for decades. And so they've become very, very, very good at it.
Sure.
And what they rely on is deception, right? These are clandestine tactics because they infiltrate and then they take over.
Solomonsky.
Right, and so what do you have to do for that? Well, you can't tell people what you really are about. So, and that is why you have, fast forward to the Michael Brown days, right, where they take real issues and they exploit them for their own benefit. Now, when I said that in the wake of George Floyd, I had people leaping up and down accusing me of racism. I was like, no, I'm not denying that there are real racial issues to be addressed.
And by the way, that goes on both sides.
What I'm telling you is there are bad people with a political agenda.
Absolutely.
Who are taking your valid issue and exploiting it.
No doubt about it.
And they don't care about you.
No, they do not.
Or your issue. And so you weren't, people didn't want to hear that at the time. But what people don't realize is there's an entire infrastructure around this. So, for example, there's an organization called Momentum, and they give you the play-by-play in how to create your own movement, right? So that's a step-by-step guide to making a movement. Then you have organizations like the Sunrise Movement. They take that into the schools and they teach kids how to do it. But they don't say it's about Marxism. They say it's about social justice, or what do you care about? Is it that, is it animals, or is it the climate, or is it this, or is it that? And then there's also moments for mass movements, right? And that is the ideology and the playbook for how to turn a moment like Michael Brown's shooting in Ferguson, like Freddie Gray in Baltimore, like George Floyd in Minneapolis, how to turn a moment into a mass movement. Now, if you have an entire network of what they call affinity groups that have all created their own movements, and you unite around one moment for a mass movement, that's what you've seen actually being put into practice. And the political arm of that on a local level is indivisible, which is where all the money goes. That's how you get a whole bunch of, for example, in a conservative suburb, you may have one conservative on the city council. Oh, look a little closer. There's indivisible is right behind all the others, and there's money in there, right? And then one step from that is now up at the national level, that's happening. And then at the international level, because you have organizations like ISD Global.
The CCP.
Right? Well, before you even get there, I'm talking about NGOs who implement this ideology on a local level, on a national level, and then on an international level.
1,000 Currents would be another one out in San Francisco.
1,000 Currents and Tide and so on and so on. And then there's a legal arm to it, right? Which is the, a National Lawyers Guild, the same people that were defending communists during the McCarthy era, right? And the ACLU, and the people who dismantled the Smith Act, which was the U.S. legislation on internal security threats. After the McCarthy era, the ACLU was instrumental in dismantling both the Congressional Oversight Committee on internal threats, the subcommittee, and then the legislation. So when you go back a little further, what happens is how it works. You have something like Michael Brown gets shot, and an army of affinity groups get on the road. They get in airplanes and they get in their cars, and you've got lawyers, you've got PR people,
district attorneys,
you've got everything. You've got your political operatives, you've got your Antifa, right? Who are sort of a combination of your brown shirts from the Nazis and your SS, because they're the ideologues. These skinny white kids, many of them, strung out on narcotics. Another very important part of maintaining the mass movement, right? You asked anyone who was on the ground in Chopped or Chaz or whatever you want to call it, and what was going on every night. Tons and tons and tons of narcotics. Yes. And flowing in the streets. And what do you need in order for this to happen, right? You need no police. You need those people out the way, right?
Out of the way.
You need prison out the way. You need all of these things. Right.
Out of the way.
Right. And so why this is so significant is that, when people are caught up in the emotion of the moment and they have real grievances, it is so easy to exploit them. But you only have to go on, for example, if you go on CrimeThink online, right? Nobody has to take my word for any of this.
Nope.
Go on CrimeThink.
Look it up yourself.
It's kind of like a think tank for the anarchist and abolitionist movement. And you can listen to podcasts that literally break down how they took the precinct in Minneapolis, which tactics they use, how they have, they have squads of rioters, they have squads of looters. They really, they loved...
Who delivers the bricks?
Well, what they loved was how well the genuine protesters served as human shields.
Oh, yeah.
And they say it.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I learned that from listening to and reading them. And then look at how the tactics are proliferated. So when police use tear gas, one of the things that they do is they move like water. So what does water do? So it moves this way. And then once they've thrown the tear gas canisters back and the wave is passed, they move back. Where did they learn that? According to their own writing, they learned that in Hong Kong. And so they share tactics from Russia to Ukraine to Spain to look what's happening in France, where Antifa is on the streets protesting, right? And they dress the same way, the black bloc. They tell you to hide all identifying marks. They tell you to never to discuss ideology. They have rules for journalists. Yes, journalists are welcome. As long as you only turn your cameras on the police.
Right.
So you never capture us doing anything. And by the way, you have to agree with everything we say and do.
Right.
Okay. And so what you'll see is a trained agitator will do something like in Minneapolis at the outer zone. They'll whip a crowbar or something out of that backpack. You see them all with the backpacks, right? And they'll go down the line of windows, boom, 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 right? Because most of those people are not going to smash open the windows of a store and go in and loot. But when there's no glass, people are encouraged in the moment. And, you know, there's actually a very interesting young man out of LA who did a video. He was one of the people, he protested in LA in the wake of George Floyd. And then he noticed, wait a minute, there was no police around. The protest was completely peaceful. Everybody, they were black and white and Hispanic, and everybody was kind of jovial and whatever. And then suddenly everything changed, and they went back to, coming back. Suddenly this police car was there that hadn't been there before. But he said it was like obvious that it was an old police car.
Right.
And then there's
I remember this.
And then there's an Antifa guy, right? And he comes in, and you literally can watch on the video. You see them break the windows. You see them put in the light fluid. But what you also see is them trying to get the crowd into it.
Sure.
And when they don't, they escalate and escalate and escalate. And they have multiple component parts, all acting in unison. They all know exactly what their next task is, to continue the escalation until the car is on fire and they're jumping on the roof and they're getting the crowd whipped up. And then what happens? The moment you've got, a couple of black kids on there, suddenly the black bloc of Antifa, the skinny white kids, they're gone. Mm-hmm. And what are they doing? They're reinforcing stereotypes. And most importantly, they're leaving the people that they supposedly care about. They're putting your kids in front of the cameras and in front of the police so that you're the ones who are blamed, and you're the ones who get shot, and you're the ones left what? Most of them are from out of town, and they just disappear across state lines, and they're never held accountable. But the people who are left, go to Ferguson and speak to the people who were left behind. Speak to Breonna Taylor's mother, right? While Patrisse Cullors was buying up houses across America.
$1 million houses, by the way.
How much of Black Lives Matter's money went to the people?
Zero. Mm-hmm. Zero.
I don't know about zero. I don't know. I can't give you an exact number, but what we do know is very little.
Yeah, the people say that they're not getting anything. And real quick, by the way, just touch on this. We saw last week that Andy Ngo's attacker was finally indicted.
Yep.
That was great news. Also, I want to include this because it's important. These district attorneys, or so-called district attorneys, whether it's people like Kim Fox in Chicago with the Jussie Smollett thing, or whether it's like Krasner in Philadelphia,
Chesa Boudin
in San Francisco, who, by the way, if you watch his show, he's the stepson of Bill Ayers, Weather Underground, and you know that we cover that.
Keith Ellison in Minneapolis. I mean, come on.
Yeah. This is not coincidence, folks. Okay, not coincidence. This Marxist movement that we're talking about, it's real. And it's not coincidence how all these different arms, like Lara was saying, how they work in conjunction with one another.
Keith Ellison, remember he had the Mark Bray's Antifa handbook, right? Which was right here posted on Twitter and everything. And then, the moment he was appointed Attorney General of Minneapolis in charge of the George Floyd investigation, suddenly the Antifa stuff disappears. Except his son, who's on the Minneapolis City Council, who was at the time, is still tweeting how much he loves Antifa.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and who's protecting Omar up there? Could it be Keith Ellison? I think it is. And by the way, one last thing, because Lara mentioned it earlier, and I don't want anybody to get confused here, because I've had this question before when they say indivisible. Isn't your show's name Indivisible? Are you part of this movement? No, folks. Just to set the record clear once and for all, that indivisible is someone trying to project and take hold of what indivisible really means. My show stands for indivisible. That's in the Pledge of Allegiance. In other words, we are with the people. We are for America. We believe in the Stars and Stripes. Everybody that knows me knows I'm a veteran, so you know the kind of indivisible that we are on this show. But Laura's right. They steal the identity of someone like my show, Indivisible, to try to make it their own, to make it seem like it's patriotic, to make it seem like it's, with the Star Spangled Banner, with the Stars and Stripes, that it's patriotic. It's nonsense. That Indivisible, look it up. You're going to find it's backed by all the people Laura talked about and others like George Soros. We'll be right back with Lara Logan. We've tried so many of Mike's products at MyPillow. Whether it's the Giza Dream Sheets, the MyPillow mattress topper, or whether it's the MyPillow towel sets. Me and my family here at Indivisible, we've tried all of Mike's great products and we just love them. My mom loves her robe. Mark loves the big dog bed for Shakespeare. And my favorite, the moccasins, which are really great for my feet. Save up to 66% off for MyPillow products for you and your family. Go to MyPillow.com and enter the promo code INDIVISIBLE for my show, or call 1-800-716-4639 and give them the promo code INDIVISIBLE for my show. You're going to love it. We're back from the deep in the heart of Texas with Lara Logan, and I want to now attack the last piece of this. And you're going to see this in an upcoming interview that I did with Jason Jones. We did a really hard-hitting show on the border. It'll be coming out soon, and you will see it. But I want to talk to Lara about this because Laura's down that border a lot, constantly. She works with Jason constantly, and I know that it's a big deal. And that thing's a sieve. We don't even have a border anymore. Our sovereignty is nil. So I want to just talk about that briefly here because we keep hearing it. We were even watching the news tonight with Mark Levin, with Laura Ingraham, different people that I pay attention to, Dinesh D'Souza. What can we do? We've got patriots now that are saying, like in the states of Texas and Arizona, and they're saying we need to go down there and handle this ourselves because the Biden administration and Kamala Harris, they're not going to do anything about this border. And we're talking at least 2 million people this year that we know of. That doesn't even mention the people that have gotten by Border Patrol or DPS in the middle of the night. It's just, it's insanity what they're doing.
Well, this is what worries me about people rushing down to the border to take matters into their own hands, right? Is that it's a setup.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of hype just recently about the border issue. And like, for example, inflating the size of the caravan. And, one video of people breaking through the lines of the Mexican National Guard, but just so happens to be English-speaking people who were there filming it, who react constantly. And all the time, the years now that I've been working the border, I just don't see things like that. Usually if there's a caravan of that magnitude, you can follow it for a long time, and there's issues every step of the way, and so on and so on. This has a very manufactured feel to it. And so I worry because we see all over that Americans are being provoked. Americans are losing their job for no good reason. No. Not that COVID isn't a threat. My uncle died from COVID, but I've had COVID. My family's had it. All of my children, many people that I know, and there are medicines that can treat it. Yes. People can take the vaccine if they want to, and the death rates do not justify the measures. Right. And that's what I look at. I don't deny that people have died. I don't deny that, some people have had, terrible effects, suffered greatly from COVID and so on and so on. You don't need to deny that. Why would you? It doesn't even make any sense. Sure. It's a real disease. But what nobody else can deny is that the recovery rate is 99.97, right? I mean, worldwide. Sure. And if you're younger, it's even higher. And if you're, this and that, it can be even higher. So it just, when you look at the measures that have been taken, the suspension of civil liberties and people, at this point, 3,000 to 5,000 Border Patrol agents going to be kicked out because they haven't been vaccinated. Some 12,000 pilots in the Air Force. And this goes on and on and on through police departments, through the Department of Homeland Security, through the Army, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not hard for anyone to see that that has a significant impact, let alone the truck drivers, let alone your first responders, right? Your healthcare workers and everything else. So none of that makes any sense when you're dealing with basically a severe form of flu that can be treated. I was in Liberia at the height of the Ebola epidemic. 99.99% of people are dying. I can understand then. There's no vaccine. At the time, there were no treatment, nothing, right? It was absolutely terrifying.
Sure.
So if you were to have these measures for something like that, that would make sense. And I'm always one to say if things don't add up, like naturally, normally, organically, then that's a red flag.
Absolutely.
There's a problem there. And this doesn't add up. So what is happening with the border is that a policy is being implemented by the Biden administration without telling the American people that this is now our national policy. And that policy is an open border one, right?
Right.
They don't believe in holding sovereign rights over other rights, human rights, that they designate. So whereas the Constitution actually enshrines and protects our God-given rights, what has happened with this radical kind of progressive ideology is that we now randomly and arbitrarily at will create human rights. And the problem, of course, with human rights is that, okay, Hitler could have created a human right, right? Sure. I mean, it's like
Stalin.
Right, exactly, whoever it happens to be. And that is a very distinct thing that is obviously open to abuse and is being abused now. So what happened is that in 2018, the United Nations adopted migration as a human right with the Global Compact on Migration. And if you look at the wording of that document, they talk about safe, orderly, regular migration. Well, go back, do yourself a favor and go back and listen to Jen Psaki or to Mayorkas or to Biden and others in the administration. They talk about safe, orderly, regular migration.
Yes, they do.
And they have removed illegal from the language.
Oh, yeah.
And they have tied the hands of our immigration enforcement authorities. ICE is not allowed to do their job in 99% of cases.
I felt so bad for Tom Homan. Just the guy, what he went through, they just continually stripped and stripped and stripped. And he comes on and you feel like, what can this guy do? The hands are tied.
And now it's even worse. So effectively, they've abolished ICE. But of course, they still have ICE there to do whatever they want when they want it, right?
Oh, yeah.
And now Mayorkas has issued a policy that gives legal rights to illegal immigrants that supersede our sovereign rights.
Right.
So you are not allowed, ICE is not allowed to enforce an immigration violation unless it happens alongside something like rape or murder, very, very severe violent crimes.
And that's only if they catch it.
And if they try to deport you for an immigration violation only, you can now sue them. And that's how we get to where we are with the ACLU and their lawsuit and, talk of a settlement and paying people $450,000 per person. One thing that always gets left out of the conversation, which really frustrates me, is that, you as an American citizen, if you were to break the law, even, a significant traffic violation, a DUI, somebody is killed in an accident, if you had your kids in the car, what would happen?
I'd lose my kids.
You'd be separated. Your family would be separated.
Vehicular homicide.
Every day in this country, when people break the law, they are separated from their children.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that it's identical, but we act as if this is the crime of the century. And we ignore all of the Americans who are impacted by this.
Absolutely.
And that's not right, because we need the whole truth. I'm not arguing for family separation. I'm not arguing against it. I'm saying we should have an honest conversation based on the whole truth, not just selectively, choosing this part and that part. And what we do with the border is we select only the humanitarian problem. And we never, ever, ever address the border in any other terms. So we ignore all of the national security issues.
Yep.
And the narcotics, the opioid crisis. Well, there was a moment in this country where you couldn't turn around without hearing opioids, 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 right?
Right.
I mean, it was, oh, no, look at this, and oh, no, isn't this so terrible? How is it we've surpassed the highest number of overdose deaths, not by 1,000, not by 5,000, right? By more than 10,000, and it's still rising. And no one says a word.
I think the number this year is going to be like 97,000, roughly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And at the time that, they were yelling and screaming during the Obama administration, I think in 2016 it was around 60,000 overdose deaths. Yeah. And now we're closer to 100,000.
Trump brought it down.
And you don't hear anything about it.
No.
But, Trump brought it down. But Trump also, his administration also defined the border in terms of the immigration issue and the humanitarian issue. We still didn't do anything about national security. Yeah. We still didn't address the cartels. We still didn't address,
human trafficking.
Yes.
Fentanyl.
Well, and Trump did a lot with
did.
Human trafficking.
He did a lot.
And by shutting down the border and protecting American sovereignty, and he didn't shut the whole border down. But by the policies that he employed, reducing the flow of human beings, reduced the pool of people.
Exactly.
Which was available to the cartels.
And he was making the effort by building the wall, by putting more resources, by letting people like Tom Homan do their job.
Well, it wasn't an open border policy. There was a border and he was protecting it. So, whether you agree with all of his policies or some of them or whatever it is, most Americans believe in having a border.
Absolutely.
And protecting it, having border security. That is not a partisan issue. That is not a Trump issue. It is not a left and right issue. Most Americans believe that.
Absolutely.
Yes, people want a humane border policy. But what I realized, the hard part for me, because I'm a mom and my heart breaks, and I see people in distress or in difficult circumstances, suffering in some way, and literally my heart breaks. I mean, It was painful for me to be there and to be covering it. But at the same time, I realized that whether you put the number at 1 million or 2 million or 10 million, it will never stop.
No.
It'll never stop.
No.
You will literally, at some point, if you believe in having a border and you have a cutoff point or you have some form of security, there will be tragedy. There will be people that deserve a chance that don't get it. There will still be grifters and, people who don't deserve a chance who get in. And there will still be national security issues. But so the only alternative to that is an open border, which means no country, which means no sovereignty. And in the
no
end,
law of order.
And we can all see where that's going.
Yeah.
And the truth is that none of those people coming over the border, when I'm talking now about the people coming for a better life, none of them believe in an open border either. You know that?
That's right.
I talk to them all the time. And I don't blame people who are genuine in wanting a better life for taking a chance. That's just, me personally. I mean, I'm an immigrant. I came here and I was lucky enough to be able to make a life here.
But you didn't come here illegally, number one. And number two, think about it
No, I got married.
That's right. But a lot of people, they have to understand, okay, let's say it was their country and it was the reverse and we were coming there. There's a lot of people that have worked for 50, 60 years in this country that have paid taxes, veterans included.
But you see, we're doing it again.
Yeah.
We're talking about the border in human and in immigration terms.
Yeah.
And what are we not talking about?
Well, we're not talking about all these other things that you just mentioned, which
we're not talking about hackers, Chinese hackers coming in, inserted on the border by the
radical Islamist, jihadist.
Radicals of any kind.
Of any kind. MS-13.
We're not talking about the flow of weapons, and it's not just going south. according to law enforcement, there are weapons flowing into this country as well. We're not talking about the corruption of local governments along the
Right.
border. We don't want, governments that are completely corrupt.
No.
Sure, some level of corruption. I mean, I'm
We're not talking about Pakistan. We go on.
And of course, there's corruption in our government. But what you're actually talking about is, for example, one of the most powerful cartels in Mexico, Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generacion, CJNG. They have moved their most powerful people in charge of corrupting the Mexican government and authorities into the U.S. And corruption is spreading. There are counties along the border that are, Starr County in Texas. The Harris County, not Harris County. These counties have had historically real issues, and it's worse than ever. Yeah. And no one benefits from corruption.
Nobody does.
Except the corrupt, right?
That's right.
It's like stealing, right? And that's what you're doing. You're stealing from the people, and you're either stealing their rights, or you're stealing opportunity, or you're actually stealing money. But, literally it impoverishes every society. Where
everybody down.
Yeah. And so there's many, now the cartels are doing hits, on U.S. soil. Now, they've done that for years, but it's escalating.
Absolutely.
And they're doing much more. So, talk about law and order. At the very same time that you want to defund the police and provide community alternatives to policing, which, and I'm not saying the police are the answer to everything, but that sounds a lot like vigilantism to me. And by the way, you're saying CPS should do it all, social services, because there's how much oversight?
Right.
Look at Health and Human Services.
Right.
They are taking kids across that border. Border Patrol's instructions are to get rid of them as fast as possible. We're not doing any of the checks. We've stopped doing interviews. We've stopped doing, 90% of the effort that went into figuring out if these families were real or not, if a child was being trafficked or wasn't being trafficked. That has just ceased to happen. And we're just getting rid of them, handing them over to Health and Human Services, who, once again, where do they send them? Where do they send them, John?
No.
To NGOs.
No, I got
who
it.
have no accountability.
Nope.
We have no idea where they go from there. And I have spoken to people. This is something I'm working on.
And how many ever getting tested, by the way, for COVID? I just want to throw that in there real quick.
Almost none.
Right.
But people that I have spoken to, first-hand sources, who have seen this with their own eyes, tell me that they have been carrying kids with broken bones and COVID and other diseases to the hospitals, getting them cleaned up and handing them over to people. They have no idea who they are.
No.
We are paying contractors and NGOs to get rid of these children as fast as possible so that nobody can see the scale of what is happening. Absolutely. And you notice the Biden administration never calls it a crisis.
Nope.
They never call it a problem. They never say it's illegal, because they say there are only waves of regular and irregular migration. There is no longer illegal immigration. And by the way, what is happening at the same time? They talk about 1.2 billion refugees from climate change, right, that are going to be, moving.
That's
on the
always
move.
their go. That's always their go-to. Oh yeah.
It's
climate change.
So look at that. What they're really telling you then is that those 1.2 billion people have a human right to migrate anywhere that they want. Your sovereign rights don't matter, right? They don't matter one bit. And their human rights now supersede not only your sovereign rights, but also your constitutional rights.
Which isn't going to go over with a lot of people in this country. And
but
by
there's
the way,
no end in sight.
Well, no, there's no end in sight. And by the way, they've used this narrative. If you remember back with the cages, it was Obama and Biden, that administration, that built those cages.
It was.
They tried to blame it on Trump, right? Now, with Biden back in office, the cages came back into the news, but you didn't hear about them because it didn't fit the narrative.
Of course not.
Okay.
And also then they replaced the chain link fence with I don't know, it's like cellophane or something.
Oh, yeah.
These massive overcrowded facilities. There's reports of sexual abuse. There's everything that happened under Trump is happening now on a much larger scale. Regardless of Trump or Biden, take them out of it. It's when you have 500 people, especially when you have cartels involved, So you know, and you know that you've got some gang members in there. You know that you've got bad people in there. What do you think happens? Talk to the girls, right, who've been trafficked over there. Or talk to the families that have come for a better life. They'll tell you about the rape. They'll tell you about the beatings. They'll tell you about the people that were killed along the way. You know, I mean, one rancher in Texas found somebody hanged on their ranch not so long ago. You know, so when you now have 500,000 people, it's happening more and more and more.
Yeah.
I mean, and so
That's the key, the numbers. It's like, look, Trump certainly not perfect, but my point being that with at least Trump, he was building the wall. He was trying to limit the numbers.
well,
was
he
doing
believed
something
in having a border.
Yeah, I mean,
This
sovereignty.
administration does not believe in having a
This
border.
administration, the Biden administration, does not believe in our sovereignty or a border, amongst many other things, and that's why we're seeing the numbers explode. And we can't, it's not sustainable.
No, there won't be in America.
There won't be in America at this rate. And the American people, look, you better wake up on this issue, because if you don't, Laura's right. We can't sustain it. It's not sustainable. Forget money, forget this, forget that.
Well, just think about it. Think about your house, right? I mean, if you let more and more and more and more and more people come into your house, eventually you can't fit any more people in.
That's
there.
right.
And that's the same thing in America.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great point to end on. This is a serious issue, obviously, in America. We talk about it a lot, but you couldn't get a better expert than Lara Logan on this subject.
And Jason Jones, by the way, is spectacular.
And Jason is spectacular. And
nobody knows the border like he does.
And
the cartel.
And I'm just thankful that Lara was willing to give us this time, because it's so important to get this message out there to you, so that you know what's going on, that you know the truth. Forget the lies of the the BS media, the fake news media that's not giving it to you. We want to give you the truth, and that's why I had to bring Lara on and let her tell you.
And hopefully this is a moment that's opening the door for good journalists who are still, in these media institutions, who've been intimidated and suppressed.
Give them hope.
Give
them some hope and tell the truth. Look, the American people just want the truth. If you just tell them the truth, that goes a long way. All the pizzazz and fits and this and glamour, it means nothing if you don't tell the truth, because that's what we want. That's what the American people want. That's what people like.
Everybody wants.
That's what we all want. Truth goes a long way into solving a lot of this country's problems right now. And we can get there by each of us stepping up and doing that. Don't be afraid to communicate. Don't be afraid to communicate through our shows. If you have a situation out there, if you have a witness, tell us. We'll be happy to get involved and help, but we've got to know. We've got to communicate with one another. I just want to thank Lara again so much for coming on. It's been an amazing hour. Thank you. God bless you. God bless you and your family, Lara.
You too.
God bless you folks, and God bless America.